Today, we're going to open up the devil's toolkit again and see what other devices he has prepared for our destruction. You see, if we are ignorant of Satan's devices, that places us at a great disadvantage. Paul wrote, "Lest Satan should take advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices." 2 Corinthians 2:11. So our goal today is to become aware of the devices of the enemy, so he'll lose his advantage. And today I want to talk about a very effective tool that can literally suck the life out of a church. In May of 2004, the show Saturday Night Live introduced the character of Debbie Downer to the world. Debbie Downer is the name of a fictional character portrayed by Rachel Dratch. Debbie's last name is the slang word downer, which refers to someone who persistently adds bad news or negative feelings to a gathering, thus bringing down the mood of everyone around them. In her skits, we find Debbie in a happy, joyful social gathering, and within moments, she's bringing up horrible facts or pointing out the negative in life. After every negative comment, you hear the orchestra play, "Wah, wah." Well, the skit became an instant classic. People loved it because, as they say, comedy imitates life. Today, I'm going to be talking about the Debbie Downers, those with a negative mental outlook. They're always looking for reasons why something will fail, something won't work. Instead of walking forward in faith, they're the ones that sit in fear. Maybe that personality describes you today. Everywhere you look, you see something wrong. Maybe you're one of those people that always manages to find the negative in any situation. Maybe you always find the negatives in your children, your friends, your church members. Maybe you seem somehow drawn towards the negatives in life. Perhaps you've lost your joy of living. Nothing in life ever seems to work out for you. You can't seem to lose weight. You can't seem to break your addictions. You can't seem to find victory over the sins that so easily beset you. Well, let's look at 4 causes of a negative mental attitude. Number 1, being stuck in the past. Have you ever tried driving down the highway looking in your rearview mirror? If you do that, you're either going to end up in a wreck or in the ditch. And that's how many people live their lives. Either they cannot forget their own mistakes and failures, or else they can't forget how someone else wronged them and hurt them. Paul said this in Philippians 3:13. He said, "But one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead." I'm sure all of us would like to go back in the past and change something. Maybe some of us wish we could change many things. I'm sure Paul wished he could go back and undo all the hurt and pain he caused before his conversion. But the past is fixed, and you can never, ever undo what has been done. And oftentimes, the past holds a lot of pain, memories of failures. And the more we focus on that, the harder it is for us to move forward towards our goal. The more we focus on our old life of sin, the harder it is for us to grow to the stature of Jesus. The more we focus on how other people did us wrong, the harder it is for us to mend fences. A runner in a race can't constantly be looking over his shoulder. The runner keeps his eyes focused ahead on the finish line. Paul said, "Forget what's in the past. We can never go back and change it. If we keep dredging it up again, it's only going to pull us down." Paul said he focused on, he strained towards what was ahead. Many times, people who've suffered an adverse situation in their lives, they become bitter. They become angry. Over time, their lives become negative and hardened toward others. They point back to a difficult period in their life and say, "Such and such incident ruined my life." What they fail to realize is that incident called for an attitude decision, a response. Their wrong response, not the incident itself, is what ruined their life. You know, Clara Barton, the founder of the American Red Cross, understood this. She was never known to hold a grudge against anyone. One time, a friend recalled to her a cruel thing that had happened to her some years ago, but Clara seemed not to remember the incident. The friend asked her, "Don't you remember the wrong that was done to you?" Clara replied calmly, "No, I distinctly remember forgetting that." The only way to get beyond the past is to give all your past failures, all the hurts, all the pains, everything in the past, give it to Jesus, and watch him throw them in the sea of forgetfulness. And then you do the same to anyone who has ever sinned against you. You forgive them freely, and throw those hurts into the sea of forgetfulness. Then place your focus on the prize that is set before you. Number 2 today is limiting beliefs, or we might say a lack of faith. We seem to live in a day and age when a skeptical mindset is highly valued. It seems people doubt just about everything. Now, a little skepticism is good because it prevents us from being led astray, but it can easily turn into cynicism. Someone gets healed at church, but the skeptic says, "Oh, it was just a natural event." Skeptics doubt the Bible. They doubt that prayer works. They doubt just about everything other than their own existence. Skepticism seems to rule the day. Perhaps that's why Jesus asked in Luke 18:8, "Nevertheless, when the Son of Man cometh, shall he find faith on the earth?" You see, it's the age of skepticism. It seems we live in a world that puts more trust in science than faith. Faith is seen as goofy, childish, untrustworthy. But Scripture tells us in Hebrews 11:6, "But without faith it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him." Oftentimes, what derails us in life is our own lack of faith, our own belief in the impossibility of success. Let's take a look at a human example of self-imposed limitations. You remember the 4-minute mile? People have been trying to achieve it since the days of the ancient Greeks. In fact, folklore has it that the Greeks had lions chase the runners, thinking that would make them run faster. But nothing they tried worked. So they decided it was impossible for a person to run a mile in 4 minutes or less. And for over 1,000 years, everyone believed it. Our bone structures is all wrong. Wind resistance is too great. We have inadequate lung power. There were hundreds of reasons. Then one man, one single human being, proved the doctors, the trainers, the athletes, and thousands of others runners before him who had tried and failed, he proved that they were all wrong. Interestingly enough, the year after Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, 37 other runners broke the 4-minute mile. The year after that, 300 runners broke the 4-minute mile. And then a single race in New York, 13 out of 13 runners broke the 4-minute mile. In other words, a few decades ago, the runner who finished dead last in New York race would have been regarded as having accomplished the impossible. What happened? There were no great breakthroughs in training. No one discovered how to eliminate wind resistance. Human bone structure and physiology didn't suddenly get better. What changed? Human attitudes. Oftentimes in life, the only thing that holds us down, the only thing that keeps us from accomplishing our God-given purpose, is the limiting beliefs we tie upon ourselves. Some say, "No one in my family ever went to college, ever got an education, so I can't." You know what? No one in my mom's family ever got a college education. She was the first in her family, and the only one of her 7 siblings to go to college. Well, what made her different from the others? Well, she was the only child in her family to acquire tuberculosis, and it very nearly killed her. She was the only child to spend, as a teenager, a year in the hospital and a year in a rehab facility. For over 6 months of that time, she was in a full body cast. She was never able to walk normally after that. You might say, wow, what a downer. What a terrible tragedy for anyone to go through. And it was. But prior to going to the hospital, she had never read a single word from the Bible. But in the hospital, she met another patient who helped her enroll in a Bible study. Instead of getting down about her misfortune, she got saved, and it changed the entire course of her life. She walked out of that hospital having decided to obey Jesus and his 10 Commandments. Not only did that, she went on to get an education, and she went on to become a professor at a university. She taught thousands of students, published books and articles. She learned the secret of conquering self-imposed limitations and living the life God destined her to live. What's holding you down today? A negative mental attitude? Wendy attended a Midwest high school, and in her final year, she finished just 3.5 points behind first place in girls diving. She went on to an East Coast college where she took a full load of classes. She was on the bowling team, participated in student government, and continued her diving. But what I find most spectacular about this young woman is her typing skill. As a college freshman, she typed 40 words per minute. Oh, did I forget to mention that Wendy Stoker was born without arms? What's your limiting belief today? Oh, I'm in too poor health for that. Oh, I'm too poor financially. Oh, I don't have an education. Oh, I'm too old. Or I'm too young. Oh, we're too small of a congregation to make a difference. You know, even Jesus couldn't perform but a few miracles in Nazareth because the people didn't believe. Whenever we say we can't do something, we're placing limits on what we can do. Instead of saying I can't, we can't, it'll never work. Say I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Say I can speak to this mountain and it will move. You say, the doctor told me I got some disease in my body. Well, didn't Jesus say we could speak to a mountain and it would move? I believe that. The disciples believed that. They went out and healed the sick and raised the dead. Do you believe that today? Whatever mountain you have in your life, speak to it and watch it move. We need to believe that what God's Word says we can do. Because without faith, it is impossible to please God. Number 3 today is failure to take responsibility. One of the most astonishing things I've discovered is that people don't think that they're responsible for their attitudes. They think their attitudes just happen. If they're grumpy, they say, well, I just woke up on the wrong side of the bed today. If they sin, they say, the devil made me do it. Or they say things like, well, I was just born that way. When they encounter failure, they say, I guess I was just born to lose. They blame their parents, blame their teachers in school, blame their government. They're always blaming someone else for their failures. The greatest day in your life and mine is when we take total responsibility for our attitudes. That's the day we grow up. One time, a woman and her daughter were shopping together, and being near a holiday, the malls were crowded with shoppers. The woman had to skip lunch because she was on a tight schedule. She became tired and hungry, and her feet started hurting, and she became more and more irritable. As they left the last store, she asked her daughter, "Did you see the nasty look that salesman gave me?" Her daughter replied, "He didn't give it to you, Mom. You had it when you went in. As John Maxwell once said, we cannot choose how many years we will live, but we can choose how much life those years will have. We cannot control the beauty of our face, but we can control the expression on it. We cannot control life's difficult moments, but we can choose to make life less difficult. We cannot control the negative atmosphere of the world, but we can control the atmosphere of our minds. Too often, we try to control things we cannot. Too seldom, we control what we can, our attitude. Dennis Waitley learned that lesson. He had one of the most phenomenal attitude adjustments in American history. The date was May 25, 1979, and Dennis found himself racing through O'Hare Airport to catch a flight. He was on his way from Chicago to Los Angeles and had to board American Airlines Flight 191. He had an appointment to deliver a speech later in the day, but he was running late, and just as he got to the gate, he saw the agent locking the door. Furious, he pleaded with her to open the gate and let him board. She refused, and Dennis, he was enraged. Still fuming, he left the boarding area to find someone to complain to. But within 20 minutes, the news came through that the plane he had missed had just crashed after takeoff, killing every person on board. All 258 passengers, 13 crew were killed, the most devastating air disaster in the history of the United States. The shock of the news readjusted his attitude. Instead of returning the unused ticket for a refund, he decided to keep it and put it up on his bulletin board at home. And whenever he gets annoyed at something, his wife Susan just points to the bulletin board. Dennis says every day is a gift to be lived to the full. Take responsibility for your attitude every day. Number 4 is profiling. Profiling has been in the news a lot lately. We look at a person and we make certain assumptions about them. We size them up and decide what they're capable of. We decide whether they're good or evil just by the expression on their face. But unfortunately, we humans have a tendency to be poor judges of character. As C.S. Lewis once said, suspicion often creates what it suspects. Nell Mooney, in her book Beliefs Can Influence Attitudes, tells about a very interesting double-blind experiment conducted in the San Francisco area. The principal called 3 professors together and said, "Because you 3 teachers are the finest in the system, and you have the greatest expertise, we're going to give you 90 selected high IQ students. We're going to let you move these students through this next year at their pace and see how much they can learn." The 3 faculty members, the students, and the students' parents thought this was a great idea, and it seems they especially enjoyed that school year. By the time school was through, the students had achieved 20% to 30% more than any other students in the San Francisco Bay Area. Then the principal called the 3 teachers in and told them, "I have a confession to make. You see, you didn't actually have 90 of the highest IQ students. They were, in fact, run-of-the-mill students. We took 90 students at random from the system and gave them to you." The teachers were surprised, but then naturally concluded that it was their exceptional teaching skills that must have been responsible for the students' great progress. "I have another confession," said the principal. "You're not the brightest of the teachers. Your names were just the first 3 drawn out of a hat." The teachers asked, "Well, then what made the difference? Why did these 90 students perform at such an exceptional level for an entire year?" The one difference was the teachers' expectations. Their belief changed their attitude toward the students. They saw the students as exceptional, and the students lived up to that expectation. Some parents tell their kids, "You're good for nothing." They say, "You're never going to succeed." They say, someday you're going to end up in jail. And guess what? That's exactly what happens. We need to tell our young people, you weren't born to lose. You were born to win. You're a child of the living God. You were born to rule and reign over the nations. You're destined for greatness. God doesn't make trash. You're destined for greatness, and the only thing that can hold you down is your own attitude. Pastor Chuck Swindoll once said, "The longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude, to me, is more important than facts. It is more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failures, than successes, than what other people think or say or do. Attitude is more important than appearances, giftedness, or skill. Attitude will make or break a company, a church, or a home. The remarkable thing is, we have a choice every day regarding the attitude we will embrace for that day. We cannot change our past. We cannot change the fact that people act a certain way. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing we can do is play on the one string we have, and that is our attitude. I am convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. Paul said in Philippians 2:5, "You must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had." Well, how is that possible? Well, let's look at 4 ways today, real quick, to jumpstart your attitude. Number 1, start every morning seeking God by prayer and Bible study. In Matthew 6:33 it says, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you." And all these things includes a good attitude. Number 2, choose to have a good day every morning. People read the horoscope, no one in this church, but people out there in the world read the horoscope, and it says they're going to have a bad day. And guess what? They have a bad day. Not because the horoscope was correct or accurate. That had nothing to do with it. They had faith in what the horoscope said, and so their attitude brought about a bad day. One of the best ways to start the day is to recite Psalm 118:24 every morning. "This is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it." Number 3, take captive every thought. Control your thoughts instead of your thoughts controlling you. The greatest battlefield we have is in our mind. Stop thinking about the past, your mistakes and failures. Instead, focus on the prize set before you. Paul wrote, Philippians 4:8, "Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue and if there be any praise, think on these things." Well, that scripture eliminates a lot of what's on TV, a lot of what's in the movies, a lot of what's out there on YouTube. If you plant negative seeds in your mind, you will surely reap the harvest of those seeds. Number 4, control your tongue. Proverbs 18:21 says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof." Eliminate negative speech. Get rid of Debbie Downer. When you talk, speak positive, life-giving words. My parents used to say, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. Now, there is an appropriate time for the rebuke, but too often our mouths are spouting off downers. Those words react upon us, and in turn make us even more negative. Refuse to say downers for a week, and watch how it changes your life. In 1940, outside Nashville, Tennessee, a girl was born prematurely. She was the 20th child born to her parents, and she weighed a mere 4.5 pounds. When she was 4 years old, she had double pneumonia and scarlet fever, a combination that left her with a paralyzed and useless left leg. As a result, she had to wear an iron brace and was told by a doctor she would never walk normally. While her brothers and sisters enjoyed running and playing outside, she was limited to braces. She asked her parents, "Will I ever be able to run and play like the other children?" Her parents responded, "Honey, you only have to believe. You have to trust in God, because with God, all things are possible." She took that counsel to heart and began to believe that God would make her walk without braces. Unbeknownst to her parents and doctor, she practiced walking without braces with the aid of her brothers and sisters. And on her 12th birthday, she surprised her family by removing her braces and walking around the doctor's office unassisted. She never wore the braces again. Her next goal was to play basketball. She continued to exercise her faith and her underdeveloped legs, and she tried out for the basketball team. The coach selected her older sister for the team, but told her she wasn't good enough. Her father went to the coach and told him, "My daughters come in pairs. If you want one, you have to take the other." Reluctantly, the coach added her to the team and allowed her to work out with the others. One day, she approached the coach with a proposal. "If you give me an extra 10 minutes of coaching each day, I'll give you a world-class athlete." He laughed, then realized she was serious. He half-heartedly agreed to give her some additional time. Before long, her determination started to pay off. She showed tremendous athletic skills and courage, and soon she was one of the team's best players. Her team went on to the state basketball championships. There, one of the referees noticed her exceptional abilities and asked if she had ever run track. Of course she hadn't. He encouraged her to start running, and so she tried out for track. She began running and winning races. By the age of 16, she was one of the best young runners in the country. She went to the Olympics in Australia and won the bronze for anchoring the 400-meter relay team. Not satisfied with that accomplishment, she worked hard for 4 more years and returned to the Olympics in Rome in 1960. And there she was pitted against the greatest woman runner of those times, a German girl named Jetta Hein. No runner had ever beaten Jetta Hein in a world competition. But in the 100-meter, the once crippled girl beat her, and again in the 200-meter. Then she anchored the winning 400-meter relay team, winning her 3rd medal, all in world record times. Wilma Rudolph capped the year by receiving the Sullivan Award as the most outstanding American athlete in the United States. What's holding you back today? How was Wilma transformed from a cripple to an Olympic gold medalist? Oh yes, Wilma put in a lot of hard work. But it was more than that. She believed that all things are possible to him that believeth. Her faith allowed her to overcome seemingly impossible odds and live out her dreams. And the same can take place in your life today. As Jesus said in Mark 9:23, all things are possible to him that believeth.